A very good morning to all of you. We are here with the second version of this video. The first part of the video, which was related to a discussion of the 2025 mains public administration paper 1. We took up that last Saturday, and today we are going to take up our discussion on the paper 2 of the public administration optional 2025 mains discussion. Okay. And without any delay, let's begin with our discussion. The questions that were asked, the questions that were asked in public administration paper 2 this year was, it was more of a general question, and this could be considered as, it could be considered very likely to be a kind of a trend, which you can expect to be followed in the next few no upcoming mains examinations as well. Okay, so every year when there is a specific trend that is created by UPSC, it tends to continue for the upcoming few years. So you, all those who are preparing for mains and all those who are likely to appear for mains next year, you're aspiring to appear for mains next year, you have to be, you have to be uh, preparing, you have to model your preparation accordingly. Okay. Yes, so a very good morning to all of you. Yes, let's continue with our discussion. Let's move on with our discussion, starting with obviously the question 1. As you know, question 1, uh, it is a compulsory question, and it has 5 questions within it. Every question carries 10 marks. Okay, like it was there in the paper 1. So you can see the first question is related to Arthashastra of Kautilya. This is a very interesting and a very important question. Every year, the first question that is there, it always comes from the topic evolution. And you would find that if you look at if you look at the last 5 6 years, you can eventually predict the question that is likely to be asked. Okay, so the question was very simple. Arthashastra of Kautilya means the science of economics, of livelihood of the people. Comment. Okay, now this is, why did I say that this is an interesting question? Now the question is interesting because if you look at what the statement says, it is only partially true. The statement is not completely true. Why is the statement not completely true? Because though Arthashastra is called Arthashastra and therefore literally meaning science of economics, but actually the content of Arthashastra goes much beyond just economics. It goes much beyond just economics. It is a, it's a thesis related to statecraft. It's a thesis related to administration of the Mauryan administration, of course, and it is a thesis which deals with what Kautilya calls as the concept of yogakshema. That means the idea of welfare. So when we are writing this question, when we are writing the answer to this question, we cannot just agree to this particular statement. We cannot agree to this particular statement, and those, all those who are right now no preparing for public administration, as no preparing, and you have public administration as your optional, you have to be very careful of this very idea, because a lot of statements in public administration are statements which may not necessarily be completely true, and they are asked. One of the examples of this particular statement, no, one of the examples is this. So you have to introduce the question by writing about the fact that is Arthashastra is not just about the economics part. It's not just the, it's not just talking about economics, rather it is talking about what, the concept of yogakshema. And this idea of Yogakshema means welfare. It means welfare. That would be the introduction that you write. Okay. The body part of your answer would include substantiating what you have introduced. So the body part of your answer would include why have you said that it deals not just with the science of economics, rather it goes beyond that. So you would write how the, specifically when it comes to no Kautilya talks about factors like the duties of king, and how though Kautilya during that particular period, uh, the there was no the system was a monarchic system that existed, but still Kautilya's king is called as a constitutional slave. Kautilya's king is called as a constitutional slave. It is just like how a modern democratic system works. Because even though in a modern democratic system you have the council of ministers, the prime minister, or for that matter, a president in the presidential system, but you would find that they are all constitutional slaves, which means they have to follow what the constitution says. And if there is a contradiction to that idea, that means if any executive contradicts what is provided in the constitution, it is subjected to, the decisions are subjected to a lot of criticism. So you have to mention that how his king was a constitutional slave, and the duties included palana, rakshana. That means it is about ensuring that the state, the king that is there, they take decisions which would result into welfare or yogak yogak shima. They result into what? They result into yogak shima. Clear? This is something that you have to mention. You have to talk about how the no though Kautilya talks about, though Kautilya talks about king having rights, but not directly but indirectly, the king is supposed to perform duties which are for welfare of the citizens. And whenever the king goes beyond that, there are offices like the amatya. What is this office? The Council of Ministers. And what is the responsibility of the Council of Ministers? The responsibility of the Council of Ministers is to act as a check on the king. That means any arbitrary decisions, if they are being taken by the king, so that has to, no, there has to be a check on it. Similarly, there is also there is also a check which has been talked about by Kautilya, where Kautilya says that if there is an excessive use of dand, this would attract cope. That is, it would attract discontent, discontent of the subjects. That means it is going to attract discontent of the no of the people. And this discontent possibly would result into the king being what? Brought down from that very position. So what you see here is that the idea of Arthashastra, the concept, the thesis of Arthashastras go beyond just economics. And then you will substantiate the statement. You cannot write that it is everything is wrong. You have to mention that how Kautilya also emphasizes on the importance of revenue administration. Revenue administration. He gives a lot of importance to revenue administration. In fact, if you look at his Saptanga theory, if you look at his Saptanga theory, in his Saptang, that means the seven arms and the seven important pillars of the state, he talks about Kosh or treasury to be an important part. You will mention such points and then for you will conclude your answer. Clear? So yes, this is how you approach it. Remember, not all statements are always completely true. Sometimes what happens is that there are some statements, and those statements are what? Those statements are not entirely correct. So you have to, as a student of public administration, as an aspirant, identify what are those statements which are not completely true, and address it accordingly. That is, you cannot say the statement is wrong, but you have to provide a contrary view to the statement as well, like we have done here, and accordingly you can conclude your answer. Okay, so for this you write, no, you need to do what? You need to have conceptual clarity, and only then you can make right interpretations of the statement. Clear? Anyways, let's move. Let's look at the second question. Trace the reasons for limited effectiveness of the NITI Aayog. This was a question which I had expected because we have completed 10 years of the NITI Aayog, because obviously you know that the NITI Aayog has been functioning since the year 2015. So it is now the year 2025, and in our discussion, during our discussion in the class itself, I had specifically, I think the third batch students that are there, I had specifically, while talking about this, told you that you can expect a question on NITI Aayog this mains examination or the next mains examination, because of the NITI Aayog completing 10 years. Okay. So the question is that what is the reasons for limited effectiveness? What is the reasons for limited effectiveness? Now, so there are a few challenges that the NITI Aayog is facing. What are those challenges? The challenges are that if you look at certain structural challenges, and there are some functional and federal challenges that the NITI Aayog is facing. Okay, so what are those? You can start with the first point, which is NITI Aayog is a advisory body. So it's an advisory body, and the only thing that it can do is it can make recommendations. Okay, and those recommendations are not binding on the government. They are not binding on the government. Okay, so the first point is that. Now, if you look at a comparison, that is, if you compare NITI Aayog with the Planning Commission. Now, the Planning Commission, on the other hand, had some very important functions which the NITI Aayog today does not perform, like it is related to the allocation of resources. So the Planning Commission, the Planning Commission was responsible for doing what? The Planning Commission was responsible for providing discretionary grants to the state, so that the states could do what? The states could contribute to the achievement of the 5-year plans. But this is not what the NITI Aayog does. So effectiveness of the NITI Aayog gets compromised on that very reason. Okay. Secondly, it's a non-statutory body. So it's neither a constitutional body, it is neither a statutory or a legal body. Okay. So it's a non-constitutional, non-statutory body, and that in itself does what? It restricts its ability to enforce and monitor implementation of its policies. So it is no, it can be classified as what? It can be classified, criticized as a glorified recommendatory body. Okay. Third point, there is a absence of accountability and oversight mechanism. So what suggestions NITI Aayog is doing, is making? What are the what are the specific what are the specific you can say, what are the specific oversight over the NITI Aayog? So on who no what is the supervision over the NITI Aayog? That is not clear. Okay, so that is the structural problems. Now, when it comes to functional problems, obviously advisory nature. So even Now, even if it is suggesting policy measures, it is advisory, it is up to the government. Clear? Secondly, in ensuring cooperative federalism and genuine center state engagement, it remains difficult. Why? Because most of the times, even though the NITI Aayog, unlike the Planning Commission, does make that structural adjustment, where in Planning Commission there were no members from the state, but in NITI Aayog there are members from the state. So that structural arrangement has been made, but the thing is that because of the political differences that are there, genuine cooperative federalism is not something which are no which would be visible. In fact, it is not something which is visible. Okay, so that is one of the problems that also exist. Okay. So uh, obviously you will find opposition parties, and opposition parties not always are, no, they are not always agreeing to what the ruling party has to say, and there is a problem related to federalism. Allegation of what? Partition functioning. That means the Niti Aayog has been alleged to have preferred those states where the political party that are ruling are also the same political party which is at the center. So there is a partition functioning of the Niti Aayog also, that is favoring certain states over the other states. So that is also a problem. And the last but the most important thing that has to be highlighted here is the fact this is both it's positive as well as it's negative. Positively speaking, by involving the private consultants, no, what has happened that by involving private consultants, you are using specialization, and this specialization is being introduced in the policy recommendations and policy advices that the Niti Aayog is giving to the government. But on the contrary, it can also be looked at from a negative perspective, because when there is a heavy reliance, it does what? It reduces the engagement with independent academics as well as the civil society voices. Okay. So this has also been criticized that there is a heavy private sector, no, private reliance of the Niti Aayog over no, the private players, and that is the reason why there is a compromise that has been seen over other players. Okay, so that is also one of the problems. Clear? So this is the issues that are there, but you cannot end the answer like this, because we cannot just criticize the Niti Aayog and leave our answer. So in the concluding remarks of your answer, in the conclusion part of your answer, you could do what? You could even mention certain achievements, specifically mentioning about the SDGs, that is the Sustainable Development Goals, and the role that the Niti Aayog has played there. Similarly, you can also talk about the multidimensional poverty index multidimensional poverty index. Now, India has its own multidimensional poverty index. So, there is a multidimensional poverty index that has been taken up by the UNDP. But along with that, India has its own multidimensional poverty index, which has been taken up for the states by the Niti Aayog. So, you can mention 2 or 3 achievements of the Niti Aayog and accordingly end your answer. Okay, moving on. Third, highlight the constitutional provisions and the judicial interventions to promote gender equality in India. So, when we are talking about constitutional provisions as well as judicial interventions, which means we will have to talk about what the constitution has to say. So, certain articles related to the constitution in certain cases where the Supreme Court has come up with certain rulings related to women empowerment, or you can say in gender equality. Okay. Now, the first thing here is that you will have to mention the provisions related to fundamental rights. Okay. So, not starting with directive principles, you should be starting with fundamental rights, and you should be mentioning about Article 14, 15 as well as Article 16 of the Indian Constitution. So, Article 14, 15 and Article 16 of the Indian Constitution talks about equality for all. Uh, irrespective of gender, caste, etc., etc. So because it talks about equality, so that provision, fundamental rights, is where you start your answer. Okay, after which you go on to directive principles, and in directive principles you mention some very important of those directive principles. I've written here 39, 42, 46, which talks about what? Which talks about equality of no pay. It talks about just and humane condition for work. It talks about maternity relief, as well as it talks about promotion of women welfare. Okay. So Article 39, very important. The provisions of Article 39 clause B and clause C even override fundamental rights under Article no, no, fundamental rights under Article 14 as well as under Article 19 of the Indian Constitution. You know that. Okay. And article, no, if you look at the provisions that are there, so there are some other clauses of of the no, of Article 39, which talks about there should be equal pay for equal work and so on. So those provisions of the directive principle, they are very important. In fact, the no, the government of India as well as the government of states have even enacted laws to implement these provisions. Along with this, when it comes to fundamental duty, we cannot forget writing fundamental duty here, because one of the fundamental duties talks about what? Renouncing those practices which are derogatory towards women dignity. So we have to mention that even one of the fundamental duties talks about giving up such practices. Okay. Now, obviously, it is a 10 marker, so you cannot write everything. You have to pick and choose. Okay, mentioning everything is important. Describing everything in this case is not. Okay, and when it comes to judicial interventions, it can start with one very important case, Air India versus the Nagesh Mirza case, which was related to what? Employment policies. No, the Supreme Court struck down discriminatory employment policies here. Secondly, the Mary Roy versus the state of Kerala 1986 case. And what did the Supreme Court did here? Under the Christian law, equal inheritance right for women. Clear? Similarly, the recent Ashnur Kaur versus the Union of India case, which talks about what? Which talks about merit superseded gender-based reservation and discriminatory selection in public jobs. Vishakha guidelines. We cannot forget Vishakha guidelines and the importance of it in ensuring that there is workplace safety for for women. So these are some of the provisions that you can mention. Okay. The conclusion of this answer could be a constitutional no, you can address the constitutional philosophy. You can talk about the constitutional philosophy as the philosophy of the Indian Constitution talks about equality. It very much emphasizes on what? It very much emphasizes on justice. So you could mention these and accordingly conclude your answer. Okay, moving on. In contemporary times, the district collector should prioritize teamwork and hierarchical structure, should prioritize teamwork over hierarchical structure. Comment. Now, this question seems to be, this question seems to be, some of you may feel that it is a tough question, but that is not the case. Why? Because we have to understand what is the changing role that we have witnessed in the office of the district collector. Okay. So, in this case, if you look at the evolving role, what has been the evolving role? During the British period, the powers were concentrated in the office of the district collector post post the enactment of the constitution, and also the evolving nature of the state has made some amendments to that. What were those? You would see today that the district collector is today acting as more of a coordinator, leader, facilitator. Even the second administrative reforms commission and all some of the expert bodies that have there, they have also advocated that collector's role should focus on what? intersectoral coordination, participatory governance, and leadership. Delegation and shared responsibility today is very vital. Why? Because there are developmental programs, crisis response, welfare initiatives that are there, and there are specialists which are being recruited by the government, so the district collector could be advised by those specialists. So you can see that the role is of a coordinator, of a facilitator, of a leader. The nature of the state has also been changing as of today. Today we live in an era of LPG. In an era of LPG, and with the more maturing of India's democracy, the better participation of civil society organizations, participation of the private organizations, all of these that are there, they specifically talk about what? They specifically talk about a change of the role, not the role which was adopted during the British period, not the role which was adopted during the pre-LPG era. A new role has been evolved. And this is the reason why we today need to prioritize teamwork. So in contemporary district administration, today what the district administration faces is multi-sectoral challenges. Because see, district has always been the most important, it has always been the most important unit of administration and governance in India. Even when it comes to planning, planning in India is also done at the district level. So district is considered to be the primary unit. And that is the reason why multi-sectoral challenges have evolved. Like when we talk about disaster management to health, education, infrastructure. All of this requires proper coordination. Today, we are talking about multiple stakeholders, external stakeholders like the panchayat, the NGOs, the civil society. So, if we try and look at hierarchy, or we resort to that rigid superior subordinate relationship in order to address these problems, it would not work out. So, what we need to do is this hierarchical command structure would not be the no, it would not be the mechanism. Rather, more appropriately, there needs to be shared ownership, there needs to be innovative problem solving, there needs to be interdepartmental coordination, and therefore a team based approach would empower officials. It would therefore result into better, there would be better achievements and better results. Okay, so this is how you conclude this very answer. Not very difficult, only with the basic understanding you can write it. Okay, examine the significance of field organizations in enhancing policy implementation of projects like Manrega and Swachh Bharat mission. Again, if you know what the field organization does, you can easily correlate it to Manrega and Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. I know that you would initially think, how is it possible that at that particular time itself, if you have not read no the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, or a policy like Manrega in its entirety, how would you come to do this? See, the only thing that is required is that you should know what is the job of the field organizations. If you know what the what are the micro jobs that the field organization does, you could correlate it to Manrega as well as MG Narega as well as Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, and accordingly write an answer on it. Like, see, how have I attempted to write this? I have attempted to write this by just looking at what exactly does the what exactly does these organizations do. Like, the field level organization is the organization which is responsible for actual implementation. Therefore, it is responsible for providing last mile service delivery. It is responsible for community mobilization and awareness. It is responsible for the decentralized, that is implementation level decision making. It is responsible for ensuring that there is transparency and accountability, there is proper feedback loop that is maintained, there is convergence of schemes, because a lot of schemes that are there today are being implemented through the process of convergence. That is not one scheme, rather multiple schemes that are there, they are implemented in one, no through you can say through one specific policies. Like, in the during our discussion in the class itself, I have talked about how in the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, The objective is not limited to just providing what? Just providing housing. It needs to be, yes, housing, but along with it, it needs to also have a gas pipeline. It needs to have a tapped drinking water connection. It needs to have a working toilet in accordance to the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. All of this is basically what convergence is. Okay. And what have I done then? Then I have introduced in Manrega and Swachh Bharat mission, what are the specific steps that can be taken? So I know that when you read the question initially, you would feel that, how can I shape this question if I don't know exactly what are the provisions related to MG Narega or what are the provisions related to Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. If you know it, it is very good, but if you don't know it, you don't have to actually write about those policies. You have to know what the field organization does and accordingly shape it in accordance to what the policy, which policy we are talking about. Okay, that is how you address this particular question. Okay, so we have completed the first question number 1. Let's move on to question number 2. The colonial legacy is responsible for many administrative problems in independent India, as the role of company agents and traders evolved into magistrates, governors, and civil servants. See, the second part of the question that is there, it is there only to make the question sound tough. Otherwise, the question in very simplified terms is what? The colonial legacy and the problems related to administration. That is the question. So what you have to do is you have to address this question by writing that because there is a colonial legacy to India's administration, most of the no most of the provisions, most of the offices, most of the rules, they are the same colonial legacies that we are following, and what are the problems that have emerged because of it. That is what you have to write. The second part of the question is just to confuse, and any individual who no may just look at the question and without understanding it, if if he tries to address this, so he will find the question to be tough just because he has not understood the true nature of the question. The true nature of the question simply says that when it comes to the British legacy, so what are the problems? So if you look at British system was hierarchical, rule bound, and centralized, and this is basically the problem. Okay, this is basically the problem. So you have to address it. If you look at here, I have talked about decision making, centralized decision making. I have talked about how the focus was not on development or citizen services. I have talked about the problem related to structure, the structure being rigid, non innovative, non responsive. The relationship between administration and citizen was always a rural mindset oriented. It is even today. So you have to address it by referring to those problems and writing it here. Okay. Now, there is also a problem related to the administrative culture, which is a British legacy. So, what are the problems? You will find there are problems related to implementation, decision making, grassroots level governance. There are problems related to innovation, flexibility, and interdependence. There are problems related to service delivery, transparency, participation, as well as adaptation. So, this is basically what you have to write here. Okay, nothing much. The only thing that is required, because when I was after the 2025 mains examination, some students came to me and asked, they were saying that, sir, the question was very general. We sometimes certain questions, how would we make it public administration centric, and no, I faced problems with it. See, the only thing that you have to do is that when you are writing your examination, you have to be calm, and you have to be, you have to always be confident on what you have read. So the focus should not be on reading more things. Like I was talking about this in the last class also, when I was telling you that, see, the focus should be on the capability to analyze. If you have the capability to analyze, so you will be able to write answers, even if you don't know directly what the answer is basically asking, but there are some important things which would allow you to write a good answer on it. Okay, so focus on the actual requirement, not on the wordings. Focus on the actual requirement of the question. Clear? Despite division of subjects, the union contributes towards subjects in the state and concurrent list, discuss its pros and cons in light of fiscal federalism. Okay, so the question simply says, first of all, you have to address this point as to how does union contribute to the state and concurrent list, and you have to mention the pros and cons of it. So what does it see? What does it lead to? Uniformity in development. So if there is a centralized development or a centralized contribution or centralized policy making that is done in the form of, like, you must have heard about centrally sponsored schemes. You must have heard about central sector schemes. You must have heard about how the finance commission works, and the finance commission also makes recommendations. We have just talked about the NITI Aayog and how the NITI Aayog makes recommendations. So this is basically the mechanism, whether it is centrally sponsored schemes, whether it is the central sector schemes, whether it is the finance commission, whether it is the NITI Aayog. These organizations are how, though the center does not directly deal with those subjects which are related to the states, but still through these mechanisms they do implement those no implement policies on those subjects which otherwise belongs to the states. And obviously concurrent list is also there. But what are the pros and cons related to it? Pro is that it results into uniformity. Like, if we talk about the new education policy, and recently the government came up with a new education policy, wants that should be implemented to the whole of India. So what would that bring about? It would bring about a uniformity. So if there is a child who is maybe studying in, and his basic education is done in any part of India, it will not matter. The individual would be able to easily integrate with the other languages as well. So that uniformity is important, and it does that. It addresses regional imbalances. If there are regional imbalances that are there, that is addressed. National priorities in local domains. So what are national priorities that is taken up? Then there is economies of scale, because when it is implemented by the union government and it is implemented nationwide, then there is economies of scale. So even you can say there is a decrease of cost of procurement, cost of implementation. That is what you can say. Okay, then there is a crisis response and stabilization during disasters like the COVID-19 could be an example, that how center's role became a very, very important aspect in health, which otherwise belongs to a concurrent subject. It's a concurrent subject, but the union's interference, the center's interference, made it possible for us to deal with the crisis very efficiently in comparison to some other countries. In fact, there are no examples of how, there are no better examples related to the kind of population that India has and the kind of efficiency with which we dealt with this. Okay, but there are problems also, like it creates a problem related to states autonomy. It also creates a fiscal imbalance. Why there is a fiscal imbalance? Because union controls approximately 60% of the total finances. What is the recommendation of the 15th finance commission, and accordingly you can mention that one size fit all policies. So it does what? In public administration terms, you can mention how it compromises on the factor called localism. You can mention that aspect as well. Okay, so pros and cons. Okay, moving on. Despite we have discussed this, divergent political interests and financial constraints hinder the spirit of cooperative federalism. See, India is a federal country, which means we have government established at two levels minimum. So there is a union government and then there is a government at the state level. most of the times what we see is that certain states that are there, when they elect a government, they may not necessarily choose the same political party which is there at the center to be ruling in the state. So if you look at most of the states that are there in South India, so you'd find whether it is the state of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, even today Karnataka, or for that matter Telangana, as etc., etc. All these states that are there, they have a political party in power, which is not the same political party in the center. So what happens is that now what there are different political interests, there are divergent political interests. So because every political party has a different economic ideology, so their economic policies are different. Every political party tries to do what? Implement policies which according to them are going to result into socio-economic development, and the views would be very different. So if there is a political party which like is the left political party, so their economic policies would be very different from maybe a political party which very likely accepts LPG, है ना? So there would be a difference there. Even vote bank politics is there, so the vote bank of political parties would differ, and all these do what? All these creates issues with related to cooperative federalism. Why? Because there is, and the no there is a disagreement between the two political parties ruling the center and the state. So if there is a disagreement, so have no forming a common ground or being able to come to a common ground would be very difficult. Okay, so there may be issues. And in addition to this, if you look at certain organizations where like if we talk about the GST Council, if we talk about suppose organizations like the Finance Commission, organizations like the Finance Commission and the organizations like NITI Aayog. Now, those these are those organizations where the center and the state may be at loggerheads with each other. Interestingly, these are also the organizations which can promote cooperative federalism. So there may be issues. You have to write this. This is the answer. Okay. Now, moving on. Coming to question number 3. While the Constitution offers a strong framework of decentralized and accountable governance, the real test lies in how institutions, civil society, and citizens uphold constitutional values and practices. So, what is the question about? See, the question is telling us, first of all, it is giving us a context. The context is that the Constitution of India does what? The Constitution of India provides framework for decentralized governance. So you have to, in the introduction part itself, address this very concern. That means you have to substantiate the statement as to how the Constitution provides for that. So you have to mention that the Constitution, in the Constitution, we have taken up constitutional amendments to establish the Panchayati Raj institutions, to establish the municipal bodies. Along with it, you have to mention that there are planning bodies which have been created, like the District Planning Committee, the Metropolitan Planning Committee that has been created. There is a no, when it comes to the legal framework here itself, you can mention that the legal framework like the MG Narega law talks about social audit being taken at the Gram Sabha level. You have to talk about that. Clear? So that would be the introductory part. Now the body part of your answer would include what? How institutions like the civil society that is there, or for that matter, if we talk about citizens, how do they uphold the constitutional values? So now, now the question is, you have to correlate. You have to correlate the values like the values of decentralization, the constitutional values of participation, the constitution values of democracy, the constitutional values of federalism. Now, is this being really upheld by these bodies, whether the institutions? So, institutions here, like you can talk about the office of the bureaucracy. And how does the bureaucracy respect decentralization? You can write about that. because you will find that though local bodies are there, but most of the times the bureaucratic institutions that are there, they are, because they are controlled by the state government, so they are not very, they are not very forthcoming related to decentralizing such powers. So even if the constitution does talk about it, but the bureaucracy is not open to decentralizing such powers. You have to write that. Then comes the civil society organizations. So what does the civil society organization do in order to incentivize participation? That aspect also you have to write. Now, that if we talk about certain institutions like the provisions related to social audit, or for that matter RTI, the success of it is dependent upon the participation of the civil society organizations, specifically social audit, because it is about accountability to, at the lowest level. So what role does the civil society play there? Does the civil society organizations, no, they reinforce decentralization or not? That aspect also you have to write. Okay. And then comes the constitution, the citizens. So whether the citizens uphold the values of decentralization, federalism or not, that aspect you have to address, and you have to write both the parts. So while you're writing bureaucracy, you will write yes and no. Okay. While you're writing the civil society organizations, you will write both yes and no. And citizens also you have to write yes or no. That aspect, and that will suffice for a 20 marker. Okay. Then comes liberalization of India's economy has forced public enterprises to enhance efficiency. But the effects of these reforms have been a topic of debate. Why? Look at this. See, whenever we talk about the public sector organizations, that is the PSUs that are there, because of LPG, the PSUs have to, they had to reform the manner in which they are working. So when it comes to procedure wise, when it comes to economy wise, when it comes to usage of government funds wise, so you will find that there is efficiency on that part. There is efficiency on that part. So whether it is whether it is about efficiency and competitiveness, whether it is about financial discipline, and whether it is about technological upgradation, so that you would see that there is a, there has been a positive impact of LPG on it. But it does not mean that everything has been positive here, because if we talk about the negative aspects, so now the social objectives are not that important, because LPG emphasizes on financial discipline more and less on whether the organization is being able to achieve its social objectives or not. Clear? So the focus has been on finance, not on social objectives. Similarly, disinvestment and privatization concerns. There has been concerns that because of this this pro economic efficiency idea, there have been disinvestments done, there have been privatizations taken up, and this disinvestment and privatization has also been taken up for some very important units which otherwise play a very important strategic role. Like we have been talking about Air India. In fact, even there has been controversies related to the BSNL as well, because though BSNL has not been privatized yet, but BSNL is an organization which is on the verge of being privatized. Okay, so that aspect is also important. Employment and labor issues because of downsizing and VRS schemes that are there. So the original objective, if you go back to the second 5-year plan, the objective of establishing heavy industries was to provide employment. Today, that's not anymore the concern. And similarly, it has resulted into what? Widening economies. Now, you could do what? You could bring about paper one concepts here. Like you could mention, when we were discussing the positives and negatives both part, you could mention the impact of public choice approach or NPM. NPM. In fact, in the negatives part, you can address The answer through introducing of new public governance as well, or the new public service approach, NPS approach as well. How NPS has criticized that there has been a marginalization of state, how that is a democracy diminishing concept. You can address this, you can integrate that, and accordingly frame your answer. Okay, so either you integrate it here, or in the conclusion part you mention this and therefore end your answer. Okay, it is very important that you make such, no, you make such important references to paper 1. Okay, center state administrative relations are matters of debate, as the constitutional provision has created a strong center. It is so, no, it is so straightforward a question. Administrative relations, we have to talk about Article 255 onwards. Primarily, we will be mentioning Article 256. We will be mentioning Article 257. We would be mentioning, no, what is Article 256 and 257? Article 256 and Article 257 of the Constitution deals with what? It deals with the center's power to give directions to the state. Okay, whether it is general directions under Article 256 or specific directions under Article 257. You would mention that part, and then you will also mention Article 365 of the Constitution, that how Article 365 of the Constitution enforces the directions, because it says that if the state is not agreeing to the directions, it would be competent, it would be legal on the part of the president to assume that there has been a breakdown of constitutional machinery, thereby resulting into imposition of president's rule. You can also mention about the role of governor as well as the all India services, that how governor, who is the executive head of the state, plays an important role in executive functions. Similarly, you can mention all India services, and you can mention how the members of all India services play a very important role in the executive part. But the members of all India services that are there is limited control of the state on, limited disciplinary control of the state on members of all India services. You can address this and therefore right. Clear? Moving on. Coming to the question number 4. Experience of various state suggests that reorganization of districts was promoted more by politico-populist convenience rather than ease of administration. Discuss. Now, what is the question demanding? Can any one of you tell me what exactly does the question, what exactly does this question demand? Yes. Can any one of you tell me what does this question demand? See, the question is saying that if you today look at the reorganization of districts, that is, today we are trying to do what? Today we are trying to create smaller districts. Now, why is there a need to create smaller districts? There is a need to create smaller districts for multiple reasons. Administrative reasons. First is the reason of accessibility. So if there are smaller districts and there would be district headquarters, so people living in any area could easily access the district headquarters, and obviously any administrative task that they have can be easily taken up. So accessibility is a very important aspect. Now, creation of smaller districts would also lead to better decentralization. It is going to result into better decentralization, and decentralization is directly related to economic efficiency or administrative efficiency. So that is also one of the reasons. Thirdly, localism, that is the local issues that are there, if through creation of smaller districts they could be better addressed. Okay, so whether it is about accessibility, whether it is about efficiency, whether it is about localism, all of this could be resolved if we create smaller districts. But what we see is that that is not what is the reason. Rather, the reason is politico populism. That means smaller districts are being created for populist reasons, not for administrative efficiency that we discussed as of now. So when we say there are no, there are there are smaller no, there are populist reasons. So why is populist reasons? Because see, creation of districts, smaller districts would be in accordance to what may be a particular group demands. So it does what? It creates, it's a populist policy because it does not addresses, not being done on the basis of administrative demand for administrative efficiency. Rather, it is being done. Why? Rather, it is being done for this very reason, which is what? Which is in order to ensure, what? In order to ensure this very idea that a certain section of the population, because they demand that, that is fulfilled. So political vote bank is what is basically being taken up. If there is decentralization, there would also be financial allocation. That financial allocation is also a populist reason why it is being done. Why it is being done. Okay. So it is not exactly for the convenience, but rather for populist aspects. And this is the answer that you are going to write. Okay. Next, lack of clear demarcation of role between state secretariat and the state directorate has serious implication on policy making and policy implementation. Do you agree? Now, in this question, you will introduce the question by introducing the split system that has always been followed in India. In India, we follow the split system. As you know, we follow the split system in India. The split system says that the policy making and the policy execution bodies would be different. And the policy making body in India is the Secretariat. The policy implementation body is the Directorate. But over a period of time, there has been a more demand of participation of directorates in the policy making function. Why? Because there is a specialist versus generalist debate, and because generalists are the ones who head these secretariats and the specialists are the ones who head and are a part of these directorates, so they have always, they have always considered this to be unjustified. So directorates have always demanded that because they have more specialization, they are specialists, so they should have a greater role in policy making. But the question says that that has created its challenge. So introduction would be an explanation of split system, and also how in the rising years, in rising time, what has happened is that there has been a compromise of the split system that is there. You would address that, and then you will come to the body part where you will write about what is the implications. Okay, so you will write that how there has been an overlapping function. An overlapping function does what? It creates confusion, duplication, as well as delays. Okay, because now the directorates are also participating in the what? The policy making function. The secretariats have always had a supervisory role in policy implementation. So directorates are now doing policy making and secretariat are also supervising policy. So what does it do? It creates confusion, duplication, as well as delays. Then comes the weak accountability. Who is responsible for what? Now that is, when there is a blurring of lines between who is responsible for what, that also creates a problem. Then comes policy and implementation gaps that are there. See, when policies are designed without practical inputs from directorates, it may result into the policy being unrealistic. Okay. Implementation suffers if the secretariat bypasses the technical expertise. And that is the reason. This is the whole reason why the directorates have been demanding a greater role. Then comes bureaucratic friction. There is always a specialist versus generalist debate where directorates are headed by specialists and secretariats are headed by generalists. So there is always this debate is there, and it creates a problem related to what administrative. There may be some administrative inefficiencies because of it. Then comes, it ultimately does what? It ultimately impacts the efficient service delivery process. Okay. Ultimately, what does it impact? Service delivery process. Okay. This is basically there. But you cannot end by writing the problems. You have to write in the conclusion that what is the counter view. You will mention that there is an importance of a kind of separation, but rigid separation cannot be tolerated, because rigid separation may have other, some other issues would be there with rigid separation. Okay, so what you can mention here is that yes, a, a kind of dichotomy separation is required, but no rigid separation. So there can be some participation of the directorates. How? Like in India, director, in some states, director of a particular organization has also been given the ex officio secretary status. How this system should be introduced in other states also to bring about administrative efficiency. Okay, so that is how you end the answer here. Clear? Decentralized planning in India signifies a shift towards context sensitive development, but inadequate resource and local politics complicate the realization of goals of social justice. Now, when we are discussing decentralized planning in India, what are actually we referring to? See, decentralized planning, when we are talking about decentralized planning, we are referring to decentralized planning, we are referring to the district planning committees as well as the metropolitan planning committees. Okay. And these are constitutional bodies. So they have been added to the constitution by the 74th constitutional amendment. Okay. So they are not like these are bodies which have no constitutional backing. They are bodies with constitutional recognition. Clear? And there the constitution gives a elaborate role to the panchayats as well as municipalities. If you look at the constitution considers that panchayats as well as the urban local bodies that are there, there, no, they have the responsibility of what? They are they have the responsibility of planning as well as implementation. And with what objective? The objective is to achieve, the objective is to do what? To achieve social justice. This is the objective. It's a constitutional objective. But what has been the problem here? The problem here is been that if you look at these bodies, they have lacked effectiveness. They have been ineffective. So why have they been ineffective? They have been ineffective because either these bodies are not established at all, not established. Either there is no delegation of power, either there is no delegation of finances. Also, because of political reasons, where state bodies are prioritized. State bodies are prioritized over central, no, of over local bodies. And this is exactly what the question says. Clear? So you have to mention that how, no, how the social justice goals that is there, it has not realized because of these very problems. Moving on. Come to question number 5. You know, question number 5 is also a compulsory question. Low cyber awareness among officials is causing cyber security related issues in administration. Okay. So cyber awareness is not there. Why? And how does that create problem? So see, weak authentication practices, cyber security related practices, phishing and social engineering. I hope you know what social engineering is, where the no what kind of material that you publish on your social media websites, what kind of information that you give on your social media networks, that is used by organizations, some scammers, and they do what, they use that information to maybe commit a cyber crime. That is what social engineering in cyber security means. Okay. Phishing, I know, I hope you know, phishing mails, fake mails, these things are there. Data handling lapses, because if there are people who do not have technological experiences, this data handling becomes a problem. Why? Because data encryption, storage, transfer, they don't know about these protocols. Neglect of regular updates, so they don't update software, or for that matter they even do not know anything about the updated security practices. That creates a problem. They would use their own devices, and that again is a problem. Why? Because it results into risk of mixing personal and official use. There are insider threats also. Untrained officials unintentionally become the entry point for cyber attacks. That becomes an issue. So, what happens as a result of it is that there is data breach, there is disruption of services, there is erosion of trust, and there is also national security risks that are there. Okay. Now, you cannot end your answer like this. See, you can actually cut down upon this. You can cut down upon the problems that are there. You can write implications, cut down, maybe cut down 1 or 2 points here, but you have to write a conclusion as to what can be done about it. So you have to write about the training process, you have to write about the recruitment process, you have to write about the awareness and how that awareness can be created, etc., etc. Okay. You can write about cyber domes and how these practices could help officials. You can write about that as well. Okay. Second, the bulletin hastens budgetary process to meet the timeline, evaluate the procedure. Now, I hope you know what the bulletin is. If you don't know about it, see, bulletin is a process where when the budget is being introduced and when it is being passed, so there are 26 days that are allocated to the discussion and passage of budget. Okay. If the Speaker of the Lok Sabha considers that by the 25th day, if the Speaker considers that it would not be possible to discuss and pass the budget on time, so they would do what? They would club all the expenditure into one and would put it to vote rather than debating and discussing it. That is what bulletin is. Clear? And as I have just talked about the process, 26 days, each and every demand of grant is discussed separately, voted upon separately. Those demands of grants which are categorized into charged expenditures on the consolidated fund of India are only debated and discussed, not put to vote. 26 days are allocated to it to pass the whole of the budget. However, if the speaker feels that it cannot be done on time, on by the 26th day, they will club all the remaining demands of grant and put it to vote without the without the debate and discussion on the remaining demands of grant. Okay. Now that is the process, but you cannot just write about the process and end. You will have to write a conclusion as to what is the consequence of using bulletin and how bulletin is a compromise. It is a compromise on you can say extensive extensive or elaborate legislative control, legislative control over over administration. So you have to mention this part, how it is a compromise, how it is a compromise on this aspect. You have to mention it as a part of your conclusion. Okay. Next, new localism plays a crucial role in empowering the local actors expand. Now, what is this concept of new localism? New localism is about decentralization. New localism is about delegation. New localism is about collaboration of the no of the union, state, and local bodies in implementation of policies and programs concerning a particular local territory. That's what new localism is. Okay. Now the question is, how does it empower local actors? It results into decentralized decision making. It results into better citizens participation because of decentralization. There will be better capacity of innovation. Why? Because there will be context specific solutions. The examples you can see: Indore, Gujarat, water management in Gujarat, they are examples of successful initiatives of localism, or you can say context specific solutions. Okay. It also ensures what one size no fit all policy, that is not what is taken up, and there are policies which are more adequately suited to a specific, it is suited to a specific place, it is suited to a specific job. That is basically what is taken up. It also strengthens accountability. Why? Because there is a proximity of citizens to that of decision maker. Okay. Private private public community partnership is taken up, but there are also challenges. This would be the conclusion: weak financial base for local bodies, limited administrative and technical capacity, political interference, as well as uneven implementation across states, because not in every state the local bodies are equally empowered. Some states, like the state of Gujarat, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, there Kerala, there is adequate empowerment of local bodies, but that is not what you see in maybe states of Bihar, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, UP, etc. So that is also a problem. Okay. Moving on. The last question here: identify and implement challenges and issues related to the government e-marketplace. I hope you know about this e-marketplace system. Okay. What is the challenges? Digital and technical challenges are there. What? Platform reliability. So if you are creating a no e-market, a digital market, like there is an experiment that there is a policy which the government of India has very adequately implemented, and recently this question was asked because the government's e-nam that is there, it has now reached, I think last year itself there was a news that it has reached 1 crore registers. That means the e-nam, that is the national agricultural e-agricultural market that is there now, it has more than 1 crore individuals who are registered on this very platform. Clear? So e-market, there are digital challenges, there are vendor related challenges. That is how an individual can onboard. Onboarding hurdles are there because there is a complex registration process. There are issues related to delayed payments. Why? Because there is digitalization, but still vendors that are there, specifically MSME sector that is there, they face quite a lot of delays in receiving payments. Unfair competition, because large firms that are there, they have better logistical and resources, so that becomes a problem. There are buyer side constraints like resistance to change. Even today, the government's officials that are there, they would like to procure not from the e-marketplace or something like that. They still work on the basis of previous systems that are in place. There are capacity gaps, inadequate training, there are customization limitations that are there. There is also operational and administrative issues like quality assurance, logistical bottlenecks, as well as grievance redressal mechanism. Okay. See, this is something which you have to prepare as a template, that you know that okay, if there are websites, if there are digital platforms, so in that case what could be the issues related to digital platforms, you have to be completely aware about that aspect. Okay. There are regulatory concerns. What are the way forward? You can see simplifying thus the problems, you have to simplify that as solutions. Okay. So we have completed the question number 5. Let's come to question number 6. Centralized public grievance redressal and monitoring system, CP grams, does not effectively address local level issues. Give your opinion. Why does not it represent local level issues? See, why does it? First of all, you need to obviously introduce it, what it is. That is your introduction. What Now, what are the issues related to local level issues here in this, the CP grams? You have to write about centralization of authority. That is, rather than when it comes to issues like ration card delays, municipal service, local policing, or panchayati level disputes, these require local solutions. But the CP grams that are there, it is what? It is rooted to directly where center or the state ministry. So there is a there is a disconnect that is created. Limited jurisdiction. Many grievances related to state and local government subjects that are there, they are either not addressed, or there are lot of delays in addressing it. Why? Because there is no binding authority here. One size fit all mechanism, uniform guidelines are there, local variations are completely ignored. Capacity constraints, why? Local officials, they lack training and the capability, digital infrastructure, motivation, that is primarily a problem. There is a weak accountability mechanism as well. Okay, these are the issues that are there. Now, what are the merits? It provides direct access to citizens without intermediaries. It improves transparency. It acts as a pressure mechanism of departments to respond. It enables data analytics for policy feedback. That is what it does. Okay. What is the way forward? There should be better integration of state and local grievances system. It has to empower district and block level grievances cell, introducing a citizen feedback loop that can be of importance, and capacity building of local officials. These are the positive things that can be done in order to address this. Okay. Now come to the next question that was there. What is the next question here? It is related to, I think, Aadhaar. See, do you think Aadhaar initiatives have promoted inclusive governance and administrative credibility through light? See, the question that is there is very easy. Now, Aadhaar is something that we have been talking about since 2009 itself. It was introduced in 2009. Since 2016, we have given it no statutory status. That could be your introduction. Okay. Now the question is, what are the positives of Aadhaar? Because you have to write both the positives and negatives. So in this case, how has Aadhaar resulted into inclusive governance? See, Aadhaar has resulted into inclusive governance, like any digital platform, and like all e-governance services. Aadhaar has the potential to do what? First of all, financial inclusion. So socio-economic measures, the kind of success that we have had because of the jam trinity, that is Jandhan, Aadhaar and mobile. So you could write here about the jam trinity model and how this jam trinity model has resulted into more than 50 crore Jandhan accounts. Jandhan accounts. So you can talk about that. Okay. Second point is targeted welfare services. Targeted welfare services. So here you can mention about what? You can mention about Aadhaar based authentication system. Aadhaar based authentication system. So you would find that today most of the welfare services that are there, it has the capability, because of Aadhaar, it has been capable of filling in any kind of gaps related to what? Any kind of gaps related to leakages. So there were a lot of leakages that used to be there, but because of the Aadhaar authentication system. So today, if you need to go to a government organization and you need to do what? You need to register yourself as a beneficiary, they would require your Aadhaar authentication. That Aadhaar authentication does what? It has the capability to address. It has the capability to do what? It has the capability to address certain specific problems. Certain specific problems like the leakages. So ghost beneficiaries, those beneficiaries which should not have been, no, they should not have been part of those policies and programs, but they are getting benefits. But because of the Aadhaar authentication system, the procedure is simplified and the loopholes are basically taken care of. Okay. We cannot forget the fact that Aadhaar has resulted into what? Data driven governance. Okay. Data driven governance. Data driven governance, as most of the citizens in India already have Aadhaar. So that is one thing that it has resulted into. Efficiency in public service delivery. Efficiency in public service, in public service delivery. Because of the Aadhaar authentication system, today we can, no, we can get access to services, most of the services, without the necessary paperwork. So previously there were a lot of issues related to paperwork. That is something which has been taken care of. Okay. So that no, it has reduced that identity barriers. You can add it as a separate point as well. It has done what? It has reduced identity barriers. You don't frequently require these services that are there. And how can we forget the point of accountability and transparency? So Aadhaar has also improved accountability, accountability and transparency. Okay. So these are the positives of Aadhaar resulting into what? These are the positives of Aadhaar resulting into, no, what? Inclusive governance, as well as how it has improved administrative capability, credibility, sorry, that part. But you cannot end your answer here, because you have to write a conclusion, and in the conclusion part a contrary idea where you can mention the problems, like you can mention the problems related to data leakages, you can write about privacy concerns, you can write about the fact that it may have resulted into over reliance on technology. Not every individual is well versed with, they are not well versed with usage of technology. So what does that result into? That has the capability to create some administrative challenges as well. That has the capability to create some administrative challenges. We cannot forget that. Okay? So this is basically the problems, and you will have to conclude by writing the problems. Okay. Smart policing and community policing programs have been initiated to address social technological challenges in law and order. Discuss. Now, for those who have, for those who have uh, been taking the classes recently, in one of the batches, I have talked about smart policing as well as community policing. And see, there is a question that has been asked from that. Okay. Yes, a very good morning to all of you. Some of you have been joining late. Anyways, you can, the part that you have missed, you can go through the video. We have almost completed our discussion. We are in the third last question here. Anyways, smart policing and community policing. Now, what is smart policing? See, smart policing is about usage of technology in policing. Usage of technology in policing, as well as the fact that you have to do what? You have to also remember there is a acronym that we have used: smart, sustainable, sensitive, mobile, moral, responsive, reliable. No, we have used these acronyms. You can use that acronyms to come up with an introduction. Then you can come up with what are the key features. That is, what is smart policing? You have to describe that. Then you have to describe what is community policing. And then you have to mention the impact of it. Because if you are using technology for the purpose of policing, technology for the purpose of policing has the capability to do what? It has the capability to improve efficiency, responsiveness, as well as the investigative capability of the people, no, of the organizations. Like today, you would find that whenever it comes to riotings that happens in India, that is very frequent. You would find that organizations do what? They use, no, they use that technology to identify those individuals and therefore take action against them. So that technology, usage of technology, is a very, very important tool for appropriate policing. Okay, so things like digital surveillance, CCTV, crime mapping, predictive policing, or online grievance portals, etc., this can have a very important positive impact. Community policing, partnership between police and citizens. Remember, what did we say? Robert Peel's idea. What did he say? Police are citizens with, no, they are citizens in uniform, and citizens are police without uniform. And the initiatives, the Kerala initiative, the Mohalla committee initiative of Maharashtra, the Manipur initiative that we have talked about, you can write those as examples in order to no substantiate this. What are the key features and what is the impact? The most important factor is that it improves public police relations. One of the major problems with policing in India is that policing, we don't trust the police, we fear the police, and that has created a trust deficit. Community policing has the potential to overcome that trust deficit, है ना? So you have to mention that trust and cooperation, encourage collective responsibility and proactive reporting. You have to mention that part. Then you have to mention what happens when you add both of them. That means when you add smart policing and when you add smart policing with community policing, it has some very important positives. But there are challenges also, like resource intensive technological deployment, skill gap among police personnel, even if you use technology. See, the skill gap here is related to people skills as well as technological skills. है ना? So, policing that is there, most of the people who are there, they don't have people skills. And then comes technological skills also. So, that is a problem. And accordingly, you can address this very answer. Okay. So, this is question number 6. Well, coming to question number 7. Many elected women representatives in local governments in India, especially belonging to the marginalized background, often struggle to govern effectively. Examine. Now, why do they why do they struggle? Why do they struggle? The struggle is because of what factors? The struggle is because of these factors. First, patriarchal social structures. As it is, when you look at women, uh, the social structure is such that women are not accepted in leadership positions. So that becomes a problem. Okay. Secondly, lack of capacity and training. Specifically, when it comes to women from backward communities that are there, there is a problem because they have never been trained into administrative, how no to take up administration. So there are challenges related to capacity of them as well as training. Thirdly, resource and financial constraints. So they are not given proper control over resources, or for that matter discretionary powers in order to address those. Finally, when we talk about political and bureaucratic barriers, local bureaucracy resists women leadership. Okay, you have to add both this along with the patriarchal social structure. And then comes intersection and intersectionality challenges. So, if there are women belonging to scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, minority communities, so as it is, women are not accepted in leadership positions, but when it comes to women belonging to such marginalized communities, their leadership may not be accepted to what their leadership would not be necessarily accepted by others. So that creates a problem also. It reduces political leverage. No, they do not provide access to networks. So these are the challenges that are there. Okay, but again, the challenges in itself you cannot write just the challenges. You have to no, address the question by if you have to conclude the question, you have to write way forward. So you have to write about capacity building, mentorship programs, empowering as well as providing autonomy, community support and awareness, how to overcome patriarchal norms, etc. And finally, legal and administrative safeguards. These steps can be taken for their empowerment. That is something that you have to write. Okay. Budget is a pivot around which the whole financial and administration revolves. Clear? Discuss the socio-economic and political implications of budget. So we know that the budget that is there, it's a very important document. And budget does what? Budget is no, it's a, though it is generally considered only as a financial document, but the budget does not. It is not just limited to only and only the financial document. It is more than a financial document. It is a document which definitely results into socio-economic development. How? See this, allocation of resources. So what are the socio-economic implications? There are allocation of resources and development priorities. There are redistribution of wealth is taken up through budget. There are employment and livelihood opportunities provided in the budget. There are no, there are issues addressed like inflation and consumption related issues are addressed in the budget. There is a regional balance that is created in the budget, है ना? So the budget ensures that the regional imbalance of development that is there, that is addressed. And finally, there are some long term economic goals as well as as in the budget. So why it is, and why does it have a socio economic implication? You have to address this. Then again, you have to uh, you cannot forget mentioning about even gender budgeting. Okay, so gender budgeting part you have to write here as well. You cannot, no, you cannot overlook this socio-economic implications. You have to write gender budgeting as well. Okay. Moving on. Assess the role of government process re-engineering (GPR) in promoting good governance. Now, I know that most of you have not read about GPR, but have we read about BRP or BPE, Business Process Reengineering, BPR? We have read about that. Business Process Reengineering, we have mentioned when we were discussing NPM, we have mentioned it, the re-engineering model. We have mentioned the re-engineering model, and it was given by Hammer and Champy. We have mentioned this, that this is a model which talks about how we need to reform the process. The procedural reforms that are there, it could bring about efficiency. It could bring about more speed in with which the work is being done. It could improve the accuracy with which the work is being done. It could improve the accountability of the people involved in the work that is being done, and there will be no compromise related to quality. We have talked about it, and the same thing is being asked, but the only thing that is being changed is the term government. You are writing, no, not business, rather you are writing it for the government. So we have discussed this in the class, and you could do what? You could simply write about. You could simply write about the GRP concept. You can obviously mention an introduction as to what it is about, now how it could be adopted to make procedural changes to bring about more efficiency, etc., better delivery of citizen services. Then what could it do? Enhance efficiency and effectiveness, streamlining of bureaucratic procedures. There we were talking about business procedures. Here it is about streamlining of no business bureaucratic procedures. And what will that do? It would reduce delay. Redundant approvals would be taken care of. Redundant paperwork will not be required anymore. Some examples I have mentioned here, like the passport seva project. Promoting transparency and accountability, as we had seen, the process would be changed in order to improve accountability. You can, you can mention citizen centric services. I've already told you what is the objective. The objective is to improve how services are being delivered to, by the state. Data driven decision making can be taken up. Okay. Cost reduction and resource optimization, this is all a part of the business process re-engineering. Just the thing is that I have used examples here in order to make the question more business oriented rather than more government oriented rather than business oriented. Okay. Then you can conclude the answer by writing challenges like the resistance from bureaucracy. So bureaucracy does not want to change, and there is a bureaucratic resistance to reforms and change. We know that. Then there is a lack of technical expertise and training. There is problems related to integration of the legacy system, because the legacy system means the old system. So integrating new technology and new effective mechanisms with those rigid rules regulations, that becomes difficult. And finally, ensuring inclusivity of citizens with low digital literacy, that would become a problem, because this would require, for its usage, it would require digital literacy. Okay. So see, this is the problem. Clear? Question number 7. Coming to the last question which was there. Question number 8. Metropolitan cities are providing major portion of national wealth, but their governance is fraught with intricate institutional relationships. Explain. So the introduction would be what? The introduction of this particular topic would be where you would mention the no where you would mention the importance of where you would mention the importance of the importance of the organizations, those organizations that are there. You can say metropolitan areas, what are their importance in India's GDP, India's economy. You'll mention that. That is your introduction. Then the body part of your answer would include that intricate institutionals. What does that mean? See, there are multiplicity of authorities there. If you look at Delhi, there are organizations like MCD, DDA, Delhi Police. Then there are laws like the NCT Act, etc., etc., that are there. So there are multiple institutions that are there. Second, there are overlap between municipal and state functions. So state government is responsible for health, education, transportation, infrastructure. But at the local level, that is the responsibility of the municipal organizations. So there is an issue specifically in the metropolitan areas, because in the metropolitan areas there are laws that are being passed for empowering these institutions to take up these functions. So there are bodies which are state bodies doing the same work, and the municipal bodies are doing the same work. That creates a problem. Central government agencies also, because we are talking about what we are talking about metropolitan areas. So in metropolitan areas, there is a considerable influence of of central bodies as well. Even in the Metropolitan Planning Committee that has been mentioned in the constitution to be established under the constitution for planning in metropolitan areas. If you look at the constitution mentioning what would be the composition of that body, there is a point mentioned that there would be no, there would also be membership coming from central government to the metropolitan planning committees. Why? In metropolitan planning committees there is a considerable importance also given to whom? There is a considerable importance also given to central bodies, because they are, no, they are economically very important areas. Then comes intergovernmental conflicts that are there, because municipal bodies, there would be conflict between municipal bodies and state governments, there would be duplication of effort, rapid urbanization and informal settlements. Why? Because metropolitan areas also provide opportunities for employment. People from no, from other parts of India, they come to metropolitan areas in search of employment. They don't have the capability to live into maybe renting flats, etc. So they, no, there are development of slums around it. Management of that area along with the welfare goals of the state becomes difficult. Okay, so this happens. What are the implications of it? Inefficient public service delivery, urban planning related challenges, है ना? In Delhi you must have heard कूड़े का पहाड़ है. And for the last so many years Delhi has been fighting a problem as to how to do what, how to be capable of recycling this waste. So the capability of waste management that a particular city has, metropolitan city has, as well as the generation of waste that the city takes up, there is a huge gap between what can be recycled and managed and what we are generating. So what happens is that it creates planning related challenges. You have created, no, you have created maybe 10 flyovers to manage traffic, but the exponential rate of population growth, because of the people who are living as well as because of the people who are migrating into the city, that is something which is challenging. Why? Because we have to, when you are taking up urban planning in metropolitan areas, if you are planning for the next 10 years and the kind of growth, exponential growth that happens, there is a mismatch. There is a mismatch between what you are planning for and what is actually happening. That is basically the problem. Citizen disenchantment. People are dissatisfied because of migration. So there becomes issues related to that. People are dissatisfied because of transparency, accountability, the complexity of governance that is there. Then comes economic risks. Delay in infrastructure projects could hinder in economic productivity. And how would you conclude it? So you'll write way forward. Integrated metropolitan governance, that is creating a coordinated metropolitan councils. Like in Delhi, recently there have been some of MLAs and MP in Delhi who have also taken oath as the members of the municipal, no, the municipal corporations here, the metropolitan corporations that are there, municipal corporations, they have taken oath as members. Why? Because there needs to be a hybrid system that has to be created. That is there. Second, clear demarcation of responsibility. Who does what? There should be clear demarcation. Use of proper technology, participatory governance, inclusive citizen feedback, NGOs, local stakeholders, fiscal autonomy of the body, that is also very important. Okay, so this is basically the answer. Okay, next. Training and capacity building represent different scope and objectives. Explain the key differences that are. See, training and capacity building, why are they different? Training can be short term. Capacity building is long term, holistic process. Training has a narrow scope. Capacity building has a much broader scope. Training has primarily more of an immediate concern. Capacity building, not just immediate but also long term concerns are there. Training is generally short term, capacity building is always at long term. Training is always with an objective of development of the individual skills. Capacity building is both individual as well as organizational skills. If you look at training, training generally is done in India through classroom orientations and some field level ID. But capacity building is always an integrated approach. There is mentoring, coaching, there are reforms, institutional reforms, which are also a part of capacity building. When you look at the outcomes, as I've already said, the outcome of training is generally individual, but outcome of capacity building is about long term sustainability of the organization, not just the individual. Okay, so there are differences that are there. You have to just explain those differences. Finally, the last question is, artificial intelligence has emerged as an innovative tool in disaster management. Illustrate with examples. Okay, you can always expect a question on artificial intelligence in some or the other way. They will always, no, they will always try and test you, whether it is in your general studies paper or whether it is in your optional paper, particularly public administration, because it has to deal with what? It has to deal with administration related issues, and artificial intelligence could be very important tool here. Okay, so how can artificial intelligence help in disaster management? Early warning and predictions, historical data, satellite data or imagery, climate models. It could help predict what? It could help predict disasters. I'm not saying that it is going to always accurately predict it, but the patterns could help you recognize much in advance if there are likely certain disasters and therefore prepare for it. So, preparatory part could be done by artificial intelligence. Second, real time monitoring and risk assessments. Like if we talk about Kerala floods, AI based models that are there, they were used during that particular time. Resource allocation and logistics, deployment of emergency services, medical aids, relief, they can be done through artificial intelligence, or you can say through the help of artificial intelligence. Next, damage assessment and recovery. Once the no once it has struck, we can use artificial intelligence to assess what is the damage and what could be the rehabilitation and recovery model that can also be done. Like you can see the 2020 cyclone Amphan that was there, it used the AI model. Community awareness and communication, like the AI chatbots as well as predictive notifications that are there, evacuation guidance that are there. So for this you can use it. What are the challenges? Data availability, quality constraints are there. You don't know what is the what is the predictability, how accurate is the predictability of the AI models. High implementation cost, dependence on digital infrastructure. This is basically what are the challenges. Okay, this is what you have to write. Now you don't have to be worried about such questions. Application of what you know is very important. If you know about artificial intelligence, you know disaster management and the important points in disaster management, you can correlate the two and write it. Even if you do not know the examples, you will be able to write the answer maybe without examples, which means it is never going to happen that you don't know what you are supposed to write. If you know, if you have covered the syllabus adequately well, you will be able to write things. Okay, so do that. And last, we are going to end this session by informing you about the UPSC prelims test series that our institution KGS is bringing. The test series is available at both online as well as offline modes. It is available in bilingual mechanism. It starts from 5th of October. The total number of tests is 49. You can register now. And our offline test centers that are there, you can see here in Delhi, it's Mukherjee Nagar and Karol Bagh. We have the Prayagraj center. We have in Patna also the Musallapur and Boring Road. We also have a center at Dehradun, and that can also be taken up. Okay. See, Aditya, we will be soon planning related to a test series of public administration also. Okay, so if you no, you just follow us, remain in touch. We would be coming up with a test series as soon as possible. Okay, so I hope this is helpful for you. The whole discussion. If you have missed any part of it, please go through it again. If you have if you want to see how how to frame answers, you can see how no what are the ideas that I discuss in introduction, how I correlate things from paper 1. That aspect also has to be done. Okay, no, you don't need to rejoin anything. Okay, if you have completed, if you have completed the batch, so just focus on revision of things. There is nothing to rejoin. Focus on revision. If you revise maybe maybe once, twice, maybe a number of times, you will have better results. Okay, so there is no need to rejoin the batch again. Anyways, so this is it for today. We will be meeting in the next session. Thank you everyone. Thank you.